Hey, welcome to another Friday.
Yep, we made it through the week, guys. Here we are once again.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. So,
And I don't have your theme music,
I know
but it's coming.
it has been a fantastic week,
Yes,
and I
it
hope
has.
it has been for you too. And if it hasn't, it can be now because now you're tuned in to us and everything gets better. So, I just wanted to say with that, if you have not had a good week, you need to change it around. Don't let other people and other things determine how you're going to feel. Doesn't matter what happens to you. Doesn't matter what happens around you. It only matters what happens in you. And we determine how we're going to feel.
That's right.
All right.
So we feel great right now, right?
Absolutely.
All right, yeah. We got a really good show for you guys tonight. But before we get into that, we are Jason and...
Tina Marie,
Yep. And we are the...
host of... Hello.
We're
yes,
host
we
of
are.
Legendary Relationship, which also we're the host of...
Loving Beyond the I Do podcast.
Yep.
I think Jason gets camera shy on
Not
Fridays.
even.
I don't know.
Not even. You know, I love my toys, so I love playing around with all my things, right? So I
All
can't
right.
get to that. Can't
So
wait to get to that.
where can you reach us?
Oh, you can reach us on our podcast, which comes out every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcast delivered. Loving Beyond the I Do podcast. Like I said, we're everywhere that you get podcasts delivered. Also, you can catch us on our YouTube. And you guys may be watching on our YouTube, a Legendary Relationship on YouTube.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and make sure that you tune in every week so that you don't miss what's going on. All right? All right, Jason, let's cue the video. So tonight's topic, if you guys have seen our post, it is get your shiggity together, right? So oftentimes we leave it up to someone else or we just don't think of it at all. Or we
At
say
all.
we didn't know, right?
Right.
So it's time out for excuses. So tonight's topic is about getting your affairs in order.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But before we get into our topic, don't forget you need to go and download our free ebook.
Yep.
It is available on our website, legendaryrelationship.com. Go click on the free ebook. And what is it about, Jason?
It's about awakening the intimacy in your relationship.
8 simple ways. 8 simple ways. We said this book is not to be read and put down. It's to be applied. Read it, try it, humor us. Let us know what worked, what didn't work, and what you may want to see next time.
Yeah, more like humor yourself, right? Because if you get the book and you work it, it's going to make your relationship better. Guarantee it.
All right. And I want to shout out to those people who are our regulars. You guys, if you're on at 6, then you're late. All right. So we need you guys to be tuned in at 5:58, waiting for the live button to go live. And don't forget, we are now offering our course, which we're taking registrations for the next
Cohorts? Yep.
Yeah, which is in December or January. And don't forget, it's Elevate Your Marriage Transformational Relationship Literacy. All right. So go out there and get that. All right. So as we said, are you guys ready for tonight's topic? We are talking about getting your affairs in order. And it's time for not only our community, but everyone to understand the importance of getting your affairs in order before you leave here. Stop leaving it up to someone else or up to chance. So we are talking with Mario Reed, Esquire, from the law office of Mario A. Reed. It's a law firm dedicated to providing affordable and convenient legal services while also educating his clients and the community at large about the many aspects of real estate, home ownership, estate planning, property taxes, and much, much more. Its principal attorney, Mario A. Reed, spent several years in government with the Cook County Sheriff's Department, City of Chicago's Department of Innovation and Technology, Cook County Recorder of Deeds, and most recently with the Cook County's Clerk Office, where he developed hundreds of innovative processes, forms, and solutions for residents and constituents of those offices. His passion and commitment for helping others, coupled with his thorough knowledge of real estate, property taxes, and estate planning law, prompted him to start his own law firm where he now provides in-home servicing of clients who need legal assistance with a litany of needs. All right. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest tonight, Mr. Reed.
Mr. Reed, welcome to the show.
Yes,
Well,
welcome.
thank you, Stanley, for having me. As that bio teaches me that I got to shorten that thing, as we got.
So I was gonna say that's a pretty long.
Well, you don't want to leave anything out.
Do we see someone in the corner over there?
Someone sticking in the show.
So please introduce her. This is a family show.
She is departed, so.
All right.
Oh,
Okay.
If she decides to come in.
All right. So
Yeah.
tell her she doesn't have to cross. She can just walk on past,
Right.
say, "Hey,
This
we're
is,
all
this is a
family."
family show, and this is what it's all about. You got to teach the young ones,
Hey,
right? How to be
life-
an entrepreneur.
Life is dealing with the unexpected. So I would say, don't tell us the bio. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the southern suburbs of Chicago. I grew up in the Chinese House of Park Forest, which anybody who's from the southern suburbs knows about. It is a very well-renowned home in Park Forest, Illinois. Spent my entire childhood here, and I am just very passionate about community, making certain that we get individuals familiar and aware about a lot of things that every single day of my life now I hear I never knew about that, or how come nobody ever told me about that. So the biggest goal of myself now is just making sure that everything I know, I share it by whatever platform I can possible. So that's me in a nutshell, sharing knowledge and information to anyone who's willing to listen.
All right.
Nice.
So let us take this moment right now to welcome some of our viewers. All right. Hey,
Hey,
Vicky.
Vicky.
Oh, Vicky, no Earl tonight.
Now, I'm sure Earl is that. What's going on, guys?
Hello, family.
Yeah.
All right.
This is either Mark or Annette.
All right,
Facebook
so-
user. Yeah, we appreciate you. Thank you for checking in.
So Facebook user that said, "Hello, family. Please let us know who you are. Put your name in there. For some reason, it's not showing." Mm-hmm. All right. And another Facebook family. Let's see. Who's that one? All right. Ty says, hey,
Ty.
y'all.
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on? Good to see you tonight.
Yeah, you're going to learn a lot tonight, guys. I'm going to tell you. This is the one you want to tell people to tap into.
And
because
that you want to share.
you definitely want to share this, and you want this good knowledge, right? So if you're watching, which I know you are, share it, pass it along, tell them they need to jump on this, and they need to get this knowledge. I don't want to hear no more like, I didn't know, or I didn't know. Now you're about to get educated, all right? That's not a defense, all right?
So part of our journey or task here is to educate the community, not only relationships, but we talk about marriage, but it's all about everything that entails marriage, the relationship with our family members, the relationships with our spouse, the relationships with our children, with our co-workers, with our whomever, with our friends. And part of that is also educating what needs to be done, right? A relationship, especially in marriage, we have to make sure our affairs are in order, because
Yep.
we know
Yep.
oftentimes that someone may pass unexpectedly.
Right.
And they leave children, or they leave estate, or they leave money, or they don't have any money.
Or they leave a mess. 9 times out of
Absolutely.
10, they leave a mess.
All right, so we want you guys to ask questions to Mr. Reed, whatever you feel like you need to know. So, as he said, Mario, tell everyone again some of the things that you deal with.
Absolutely. So our firm, which is located right in beautiful South Holland, Illinois, we concentrate in all things real estate except for landlord-tenant matters. We don't touch those. Got enough drama in my own life. Not interested in taking on the drama that comes with that. We also deal with probate, estate planning, and business. So all of those different things, which in a lot of ways are interconnected at some level or another, our firm assists with. And when it comes to real estate, we handle everything from the start of the process, if you're buying a property, all the way through if you're selling the property. If you want to make sure that that property goes to the person you want it to go to, which would be a part of that estate planning. And then in the event that somebody didn't do the estate planning, we handle the probate aspect as well. So our firm really concentrates in those areas. We are very interested in making sure that people not only get those services, but understand what the process is related to, understands when you purchase a property that you get the deed right when you buy that property and you close on it, which most people are unaware of. We also help notify them and help educate about property taxes, understanding why those taxes are what they are and how you can appeal and challenge them, which is something that our firm does. So we handle everything related to real estate except for that landlord and tenant aspect. And then all things probate, we assist with except for guardianship. And then estate planning is really our major concentration because we're interested in making sure that within Black and brown communities, especially, that we are helping create generational wealth. There is a process by which for anyone who has a life insurance policy, and that policy could be 100,000 or in my case, 300,000, we help you set it up where your child or beneficiary will be able to receive a check for the rest of their natural life. And then when they pass away, every year, whoever they want to receive a check will then receive another check for the rest of their natural life. And that's all by just having a trust created that helps perpetuate that generational wealth.
All right. So before we jump into that, we got some.
me a generational.
All right. All right. So before we go further, and a reminder to all of our viewers, we cannot see your name. So if you want us to give you a shout out, please type something in the comments or do a like so that we can shout you out. So let's get back to some of them. Who was the next one?
Oh, Vicky and Earl. There you go, Earl.
All right.
Yep.
Earl, Vicky left your name off the first time.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Hey, Aaron in the house. What's going on, Aaron? I'm glad to see you, man.
All right. Aaron's in the house. Hello.
And then Facebook equals Raven. Hey,
Oh,
Raven, how are you?
All right.
Yep.
Good evening, Raven. Thanks for tuning in. All right. So let's go to our first point, and we hope to bring you guys some information that you can really use, right? And it doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter how much you think you don't have, right? Because we always say, well, I don't have anything.
Right.
If you have a diamond ring, that's something, right? People will fight over a penny. So please put your affairs in order. Not only that, but how you want things done after you have left here. So what is our first point? Jason, let's go into it.
All right. Our first point is full estate plan.
All right. So you want to bring that up real quick? Mm-hmm. All right.
All right. Talk to me about the full estate plan there, Mario.
Absolutely. So oftentimes, whenever it is that we hear that topic of estate planning, the first thing that comes to our mind is a will. That's the number one thing that most people think about. Everyone says, I got to go do a will.
Yep.
Estate planning is not simply a will. We like to talk about estate planning in terms of being like a coffee table. So most of us are familiar with the coffee table, and it has 4 legs. The reason it has 4 legs is because it's helping support whatever's going to be put on top of it. An estate plan is very similar. It's good to have a will. And earlier you mentioned, well, if you don't think you have anything, if you have a diamond ring, I like to always bring up the example of George Floyd. Pretty much everybody on this call is familiar with George Floyd, right? And what happened in that scenario.
Absolutely.
Well, he didn't have, allegedly, even $20. It's alleged that he was trying to use a $20 counterfeit bill. However, because of the way that he was heinously murdered, his estate now stands to receive $28 million because that was the settlement that was worked out with the city of Minneapolis. However, his estate is going to have to pay over $3 million as a bond because of the fact that George Floyd didn't have a will. So even if you don't have anything, that doesn't mean that you're going to leave this world and nothing's going to go to your estate. So once an individual reaches the age of 18, they need a will. Even more importantly, every single person over the age of 18 needs a power of attorney. And that's the second leg of that estate planning coffee table. And the reason why is because you all are a prime example. If something were to happen to one of you, who would you want to be your respective power of attorney?
Right. Absolutely. We always assume it's right.
But it's the other person.
Exactly.
Right.
You would want for your spouse. However, do you all have children?
Yep.
Did you know that that child could come in and usurp that spouse of yours as your power of attorney?
Good.
Okay.
Right.
Yep. Didn't know that.
Make sure we get the responsible child.
Yeah. Right.
Right. But what if it's not the responsible child? And that child who comes in and says, I want to be the power of attorney, wants to
Yeah.
do that because they want to pull that plug in hopes of getting whatever
Getting that money.
pot of gold
Right.
is at the end of that rainbow.
Right.
That's the danger of not having established who you want to be your power of attorney. Anyone who's your next of kin has the capabilities to step forward and say, I should be it. Whereas you may not want that person operating in that role. So it's important, whether you're married, you're unmarried, once you hit 18, you need to say, if I can't make decisions for myself, this is the person whom I want making those decisions for me.
Okay,
And
let me.
that's what that power of attorney is all about.
So, Mario, let me ask you a question. If you're married, it does not have to go to your spouse, right? Like you can name anyone. It doesn't automatically
It doesn't
default.
automatically. Nope. Yep. You
All right.
got it. In the state of Illinois, it's what's defined as your next of kin. So that can be your spouse or it could be your children if you have them. If it's an instance such as myself, if I'm not married, then and I have a child that's a minor, then it would go what's called up and out. So one of my parents or one of my siblings, and I have 8 siblings. So potentially we're talking about 10 people stepping forward and saying, I want to make decisions for Mario. Now,
Right.
some of them might want to do it because they want to look out for my best interest. Some of them may want to do it because they want to look out for their best interest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the danger of not having a power of attorney in place. So everyone needs a will, everyone needs a power of attorney, and then everyone needs a trust. And the big reason why everyone needs a trust is because ideally everybody has some type of life insurance in place. As I'm sure you all know from experiences that you went through.
Yep.
Absolutely.
someone
Personal experience.
Yes.
Best teacher.
When someone passes and all those other bills start flowing in, it's great if there's insurance money to take care of it, as opposed to you all having to reach in your pocket.
Right.
So because of that, every person needs to have life insurance. If you have life insurance, you need to have it going to your trust because we don't know who's going to die when. And
Right.
so frequently, especially with married couples, what I see is that you put your spouse down as the beneficiary for your life insurance policy. And then you call it a day. You say, I got my spouse on there, so we're good. And then you and your spouse get together. You go off to a marriage retreat hosted by the legendary Relationship. And then you all don't make it because something tragic happened. And now both of you pass together. And now somebody has to go to probate court in order to get that life insurance money. When all you had to do was simply have a trust, and then you would have been able to specify that you wanted to go to this person in the event my spouse is unavailable. And then you'll say, I wanted to go to this person in the case my second choice isn't available. And if it's going to a minor, you're going to say they can't get access to it until they've reached the age of 22, or they've graduated from college, or they've went into their profession, whatever it is that you want to do. So the trust allows.
Oh, wait. All right, Mario, I'm going to stop you right there because I think one of our points is a trust. And so I think you're going a little further. So let's see if we
Oh,
have.
no, he's on the 4 legs right now. So,
you got it.
Yep,
so
okay.
let
All
me
right.
go ahead
All
and
right.
finish his 4
Okay. I'm
legs.
sorry. I
Yep.
just didn't want to get.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, then we'll go to the
And then I
next-
want to
yeah.
be make sure. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you type your questions in for Mario. Any questions that you may have, any concerns that you want to know about, put it in there now. Now's the time to ask.
Yeah, go ahead and get them in there. I got you, Aaron. So don't worry about it. I got your question. I just wanted to say, Pat, want to say hey.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. All right, Aaron, and then Mia.
And then Mia.
All right. Hello, Mia.
Hey, Mia.
Hello, fam. All right.
All right. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Hey, okay. And then the last component, so we talked about the trust, we talked about the will, we talked about the power of attorney. The last component is that you need to have beneficiaries on every single financial account that you own. If it's a checking account, if it's a savings account, if it's a 401k, if it's an IRA, an investment account, we always need to be thinking, how do I ensure that there's a beneficiary who's going to receive this? So the estate planning component is much more than a will. It's the will for when I die, the power of attorney for when I'm alive, the trust for all of the stuff that I want to get there, and the beneficiaries on all the stuff that's managed by somebody else. So that's really what the full estate plan should look like. and it's that four-legged approach to make sure everything's covered.
All right. All right.
Wow.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I got one from Aaron. All right, what Aaron asked here. I want to convert my rental Airbnb business into a trust in my, I think he said, and then the next thing was in my home. Let's see here. And my home. Right. So he wants to create a trust.
For his property, his Airbnb, and his home.
Yeah.
Excellent. And that's a fantastic idea. One of the biggest mistakes that most business owners make is that they don't protect themselves by having their business owned by or essentially managed by their trust. Now, the only thing is we don't want to we never want to mix business with home. Never. Under any circumstances, we never want for the business to be owned by the same trust that owns your home. And that's because we're trying to separate those two. Because if something bad happens with that Airbnb business, we don't want for the person being able to come after your home. So what that would look like is that you would have a trust for your home, and then you would have a trust for your business, and that would provide the protection so that way, no matter what happens with home, it won't impact business. No matter what happens with business, it won't impact home. And that's something that our firm really focuses on, is helping businesses create a trust. So that way, if somebody goes and looks up your information on the Illinois Secretary of State's Business Services Office, they won't see your name because it'll be a trust that's the managing member. And yes, that's a fantastic idea. It's something our firm can assist with, and it's very beneficial, because another thing a lot of people don't know about is if you have a business, but if you've never specified who your successor is, people have to go to probate court for the business. And if it's a business where somebody needs to be taking care of bills and responsibilities, potentially that could cause for the business to plummet simply because you never specify who should take over should you pass away.
Okay. We got a follow-up question. Aaron says, what about changing the title from my name to the trust name?
So that's exactly it. So what would happen is that the first step is we have to create the trust. So as an example, we're working with a client right now. We created a trust that's called Overcoming Adversity, because he went through a terrible divorce and he lost everything. And he said, I never want that to happen again. So, I understand. Because
he should have came to our show.
Yeah.
We would have saved him, right?
If he'd have been here on Friday, he would have been okay.
So we created the trust called Overcoming Adversity. And then what we do is we go to the Secretary of State and we have the LLC transitioned over into the name of the Overcoming Adversity Trust. And then for the property that he owns, we create a deed that transfers the property out of his name into the name of the Overcoming Adversity Trust. So that's how the title gets transferred over and transition. And that's something that can be done for every asset, for the home, for the vehicle, for the checking account. So every single asset will be owned in the name of the trust. And that's the process. First you create it, and then it gets transferred over.
All right.
All right. Hey, Jessica, thanks for chiming in. We appreciate it.
Hello, Jessica. What's the process in obtaining a trust?
Yep.
Okay, so
I think you just answered that one.
all right, so what's our are we going before he gets on, are we going on our next thing, and we can do that? What's the next point that Mario is supposed to be discussing for us, and then we can go and see, because I hate for him to double talk.
Yeah, run out.
Right?
Yeah, I got you.
So
All right.
limited time show.
No, I just want to make sure I get it all in here. So we're going to talk about the wonderful
Probate court.
So what I can do is I can answer that question before we move on.
Get it? All right.
Okay.
Because probate's a very different beast than animals. So
All right.
not forget about the question. So how you go about obtaining a trust is there's two ways. And one of the things that I'm a big believer in is making sure everyone's aware. As an attorney, I don't have a monopoly on the law. So anybody can do what it is that I do. The difference is that I do this all day, every day, and I have years of experience with it. So to answer the question about how do you go about obtaining a trust, there's two pathways. You can prepare a trust yourself. And if it's something that, you feel like you're dedicated, just like the people at Home Depot who want to go and build their own decks, you can try it. But the same way that those decks usually collapse, the same holds true for people who try and create trust for themselves. And that's what leads people into our office. So we prepare trust for hundreds of clients every single year. And how we go about doing it is we have to essentially talk with you and find out, why are you creating this trust? What do you want for it to do for protection purposes? And what is it that you really want to achieve by it? Do you want to set it up where you end up creating trust fund babies? In the case of my daughter, she's going to receive a check for over $100,000 for the rest of her life if I pass, simply because I took a $300,000 life insurance policy and specified that it has to be used to purchase a certain stock, and then she gets the interest. And because compound interest builds up over time, by the time that I've been dead for 10 years, that check will potentially be $100,000, and that's every year for the rest of her life. So in terms of obtaining it, first we have to figure out, what do you want to achieve? And then we help you to achieve that trust.
Okay.
All right. And then we were going into probate.
Yeah, we are. But just before we get into probate, Aaron has something else.
It doesn't add issues at all, Aaron, because you actually do own it outright. It's just encumbered by a mortgage. But we can talk more about that at a later time.
All right.
All right. Jessica said thanks. All right.
Thank
It's all
you.
good information. And I'm going to tell you, this brother is who he is. This right, Mario. I mean, he's a straight shooter. You go in there, he'll make you feel real comfortable, right? With the law. Law can be kind of tricky sometimes, but he makes sure you understand it.
Simplifies it.
And he explains everything out.
Absolutely. So we all, sometimes people say, well, I'm afraid to ask questions. There are no stupid questions, because if you don't know, you don't know. And that's what he's here to do, to educate. So make sure if you call him, you have all your questions written down. Also, feel free. He's given us a service tonight. So ask the questions, bring them on, and then you can contact him directly. All right. So let's go. So we were talking about probate, Mario. So what is the right, wrong?
Yeah. And
People
why
have
do
so
we
many
end
different,
up in probate?
like, just give us that terrible beast, because we hear so many bad things, so many good things, so many wrong things. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and that's because there are so many bad things, good things, and wrong things about it. So that's the reason why we're hearing them. So what most people don't know is that probate court, like most terms in the law, is a Latin term, and it actually translates to prove a will. So the definition of probate is to prove a will. Most individuals think that if you do a last will and testament, it ensures that your beneficiary doesn't have to go through probate court. And it's the opposite. It actually is the opposite if it pertains to real property. So for grandma or big mama who has a house and she says, I'm going to go get my will together. And then she goes and puts a will in place. And then she says, I'll give my house to my favorite daughter. And all the rest of those no good children, they get nothing. Well, that favorite daughter still has to go to probate court. And then it's likely going to take a lot longer, because a will has to be what's called probated or litigated, where you first ask a judge to say it's legit. And then the judge says, okay, do what it is that's inside of it. So a will has to go through probate court if there's property involved. The other thing is that probate court typically comes into play when somebody didn't do anything, when they didn't do a will, when they didn't have a trust. And in those instances, there are a lot of misconceptions about how property transfers. We get lots of clients who say, well, we were married, so I get everything. And that sounds good, right?
That's not true. That's not true.
Right.
What?
Amazingly enough, for some odd reason, that's not how our system works.
Wow.
Yeah. There's what's called the rules of descent and distribution, which is a provision of the Probate Act, which says that if someone dies and they didn't have a will in place, they didn't have a trust in place, then their stuff goes to this person or to these people. And if it's someone who has children and is married, 50% goes to the spouse, 50% goes to the children. So if they've got 5 children, those children would then each get 10% and the spouse would get 50%. If you don't have a spouse, but you have children, 100% goes to the children and then gets broken up equally. So there are all of these different rules that the state has in place. One of the other big misconceptions is that people say the state's going to take it, because especially within our community, we think the government is going to take everything that we have. But not how it works. The government, J.B. Pritzker, is not coming for your house or any of that stuff. But the law does say that it's supposed to follow this hierarchy, but you have to actually go to probate court and then first convince the judge that you are an heir. And so frequently people think, well, I only have one child, so they're automatically going to get it. Not true. Because how does the rest of the world know that you only have one child? And that's why somebody's got to go to probate court and convince a judge that, judge, it's just me. And how that happens is with death certificates and sometimes birth certificates, if it's a child that was born out of wedlock to a man. And then the other thing is sometimes we have to do paternity tests. So we actually have to get DNA from an aunt and uncle and then match it up with some illegitimate child who comes forward and says, oh, I'm supposed to get everything. So probate is when somebody has to go in and say, I'm the rightful heir and I should be receiving whatever the property is. And it can be for a house. It can be for a $300,000 life insurance policy. And then what's even worse is that when there are minor children involved, you have to go to probate court twice. First, somebody has to go and be established as the legal guardian of the minor, and then they have to go to probate to establish that that minor is the heir of the deceased. So it gets very, very complicated and very, very expensive. Probate court on average costs upwards of $3,500 and above, and that's if everybody's in agreement. And we know how everybody's always in agreement when someone dies.
Absolutely.
Every single time. So in those instances when someone's not in agreement, we've seen cases where people end up spending $10,000 to sell a house at 99th and Yale that sold for $40,000. So the family loses $10,000 in legal fees because they just couldn't agree about a $50,000 or $1,000 house. So probate is where you figure out after someone's died because they didn't do it before they passed away. And it's a lot of bad that comes up, a little bit of good, but a lot of misconceptions because for most of us, we've never heard about it until someone actually goes through it. And even then, they likely aren't experts in it and don't understand everything.
Right. So Mario, I have a question. So you said if someone only has one heir, right? What if they have 5, 6, 7 heirs and they're deceased and they have an estate? Can that one heir just go and say, I'm the heir? Or what happens if they go to probate and they're trying to be claimed as the only heir? Does the state look for other heirs? Like, how do the other children not get left out?
Which is another great question. And the reality is that the state, and it's not even really the state, it's a judge who's presiding over that matter. That judge doesn't know any of those other heirs. Okay. That judge doesn't know whether there are children. So there are numerous cases where the one greedy child goes in and then claims that they're the only heir. And unless one of the other children step forward and essentially know about it, they get left out. And I'll give a story about this actually happened to someone who was the spouse of one of my siblings. They got a divorce and she went and she got into another relationship, but it was going to be potentially her third marriage. And she said, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not interested in repeating this just yet. They have a child together. The child was with the father while they were going somewhere and there was a car accident and the father passed away. Well, because of the fact that the woman wasn't married, she wasn't entitled to anything. The child was 6 years young at the time. She was entitled to receive everything. But because the parents of the father disapproved of that woman who had 2 children from 2 other fathers and wasn't willing to marry their son, those parents went to the bank and represented to the bank that they were the heirs of that father who had passed, and they cleaned out that bank account. And that's the danger that happens when you don't have your affairs in order, is
Right.
that the court, they can't protect you from everything because they don't know everything.
Right.
So what happens in those scenarios is whoever essentially is the fastest in and represents that they're the only, they're going to be the ones who end up being the big winners. And then it's going to cost even more money to go back and try and unwind it. And even if you do, a lot of times that money's been spent. So you're not getting any of it back.
All right, we got a comment here.
All right, Jason Scott, and that would be the second.
Yep. I think he's asking for himself for sure.
All right, trust eliminates the need of probate court, right? Though beneficiaries, through beneficiaries.
So yes, so the trust is striving to eliminate probate court. But one thing that I'm always transparent about is that nothing's foolproof. So some of you may know or have heard of this guy named James Brown. He's somewhat known.
Number one soul brother.
Well, James Brown had a trust. And even though he had a trust, because his family, he had had so many children by so many different people, they couldn't agree. So they still took it to probate court, even though there was a trust. And it was there for 14 years. The child who actually took it to probate court died before it was completed.
Wow.
Wow.
That's how long it was in probate court. But what happens is that the trust gives the judge clear direction on what your wishes are. And it's supposed to help expedite it. Now, the reason why James Brown's case was in probate court for as long as it was, even though he had a trust, is because it was 34 million. And those kids really had nothing to lose by trying to get more. Whereas for most of us, we don't have 34 million that's set up in that trust. And so long as it's a case where you make your intentions clear, in 99 out of 100 cases, it never will end up in probate court. So there is a possibility that it could, but yes, the trust vastly increases the chances that it will not go through probate court.
Okay. All right, we have a question from Vicky.
Vicky says, what if?
Bring it up so we can. What if the judge is a friend, if that person, and do a favor for him? That's true. That's true. That's true. You're laughing. That's true. I was just thinking the same thing, right? How do we know?
So it absolutely is true. But that's the reason why we don't want for it ever getting to probate court. If the property's in trust, if the asset is in trust, if the life insurance policy was to go to the trust, then the friendly judge never comes into play. So yes, what if that judge is a friend? Well, if the judge is a friend and does that person a favor, then ultimately you would have to do what's called appeal. So you would have to file an appeal and indicate or prove that there was malfeasance involved. But the better approach is for anybody who wants to make sure that something that they have gets to a loved one, don't run the risk of it being a friendly judge. Set it up in a trust. Make sure that you choose the successor trustee, and then at which point it's never going to go before a judge. And even if it does, you've already specified what the wishes are, so the judge can't override that, because then the judge runs the risk of losing their law license and being removed from the bench. And that's not something that any judge I'm aware of would be willing to allow to happen.
Okay, so we have a comment from Jason.
Well, one.
Oh, we missed one?
Jessica said, "Wow."
Okay.
And that was about the trust. Jason says, "Got it. Thanks." Vicky says
She was
that-
just straightening it out.
she
Judge
just
of a friend.
The judge,
The friend of hers.
of the heir,
Right.
Of the heir. So
Of the
the heir
person who
comes
went
in
to
like,
right.
Yeah. And then Jason says,
Such a lawyer answer. Love it. Very thorough. All right. So I have another question since we're putting down myths. So if Jason and I if the person is married and I have some things and I don't want to leave them to Jason, if I do in my will, let's just say if I have a will and I don't have a trust, I leave it to my kids. Is there any way that, like you said, the first one who comes in and does it, or how does that work? If I wanted to go to, let's say, my son and not my husband, and it's in my will, how does that work?
Yeah. So that one would still be a bad idea. It's a case where you want to try and cut down on as much confusion as possible, because where you open up the door for confusion, it's going to bust through the door and oftentimes lead to it. So
Okay.
you can do it in one of two ways. If you want to leave it directly to your son, you can do so. But I never recommend that, in large part because if you pass away and you say, I want to leave it to my son, your son might show up the next day and try and barge in the house and recover that asset. And legally he could, but that's probably not what you intended, right? You didn't
Right.
you didn't want for your son barging in the door the day after you pass while Jason's still dealing with your death and start talking about where's that diamond necklace or that ring.
Right.
What you really want is you want for Jason to get it to your son whenever it is that Jason essentially kind of moves past the grieving aspect. And you want for your son to be the recipient of it, but you also want to respect the fact that Jason's likely he's gonna be torn, and he's not gonna have at the top of his mind, I gotta get this son that diamond necklace the day after you pass. So what I always recommend is leave those assets to your executor with specific wishes on what your executor is supposed to do with it.
Very
So that
good.
way
Okay.
the executor knows this ring is supposed to get to son, but it's going to be on the timetable that works for the executor. And then that son isn't going to be trying to go to probate court over a diamond ring because they couldn't get into the house 2 days after you passed away.
Got it.
Got
All
it.
right. All right.
Wow.
All right. Are there any more questions? Do we have our last point?
We have one more point. Yep.
All right.
This is the fun point here. This is how you build that generational wealth.
All right. Let's
Yeah.
see. What's our point?
All right. Well, we'll get there in just a second here. Okay.
All right. And we had no more comments, right? All right. Don't forget, guys, we cannot see who's tuning in. So if you want us to give you a shout out, make sure you write a hello, a comment, type something, or like or love something, and we can see who does that.
Yeah.
All right. Vicky says, great advice.
Yeah.
All right.
Jason says value. Yeah.
All right. Lenise says, hey, family, I might have to miss this. You know I can't read it because you don't have it big enough.
Okay. I'll blow it
Don't
up
have the
anyway.
glass. That's
There
right.
you
Might
go.
have to miss this, but this is better to have a trust than a will. All right. I might have missed this, but is it better to have a trust than a will? So she probably tuned in late.
Right.
So Mara, you can, if you want to address that.
Yes. So really quickly, it's not an either or. It's not a trust rather than a will. It's a both. It's a all collectively together. So you want to have a trust. You want to have a last will and testament. You want to have a power of attorney, and you want to designate beneficiaries on financial assets. One of the biggest takeaways that I hope everyone walks away from tonight's show with is it's not an either or, it's an and. We need a trust and a will. We need a trust and a power of attorney. We need a trust and beneficiaries. All of them work collectively together, and it's for the purposes of ensuring that we cover everything while I'm alive, when I pass, assets that I know about, assets that I don't know about.
All right.
Is that where we run into problems? Because people always say, "Oh, I had a will," or "I have a will." We have a will drawn up, thinking that that's it. And is that where we run into problems?
That's exactly it. And it's because that lack of knowledge. So how many of
Absolutely.
us thought that, you know what, it is a will, or how many of us thought that it is a trust and it's not collectively together?
I did.
And I'll
I'm
be
glad you cleared
perfectly
that.
honest with
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Yep. So the big reason why that is because it's financially lucrative for an attorney to not tell you about everything working collectively together.
All right.
And I know a lot of people won't believe this, but there are some attorneys who are only out for money. I know it's hard to believe. Trust me. I don't know why anyone would ever suspect such a thing. But as an example, when our firm does estate planning with a trust, a will, a power of attorney, and the beneficiaries, it's a flat fee that's $1,750, $1,750. However, when we
Mario, you went out.
probate, it's
Wait.
twice
Wait.
as much.
Hey, go back
So
again because you
because
kind of
of
went
that,
out. You kind of went out. So we lost you at the 1750 for the estate planning, and then you said,
You froze a little bit. All
"Yep,
right.
pick up from there."
sorry about that. So if it's a case where we have to go to probate court, it's twice as much.
Wow.
So because of that, it's in my financial best interest to not tell people about the estate planning path, but let them go down the probate path.
So you
And
can get.
that's the approach that a lot of attorneys take, where they say, I'm going to tell you about just one aspect because if I draw up this will and then someone has to use it, I get paid for the will and I get paid for probate court. So it's financially more lucrative for them. Our firm and myself, I think that that's terrible. I think that that's a terrible approach, especially when you're working with people in your own community. So because of that, that's the reason why we're so committed to estate planning, because even though I make twice as much if I go to probate court, I also have to be dealing with a lot more grief and a lot more heartache and just a lot more drama, whereas we could have simplified it for everybody involved, myself included. So that's where we run into trouble, and it's intentionally in a lot of regards, unfortunately.
Yeah, Jason, I got your comment and said it cut out right after the price. Yeah, he said it was 1750 for the estate planning and how much for the probate?
Double that, he said.
It's
So,
double that.
yep, double that.
And then Lanice said that's true.
Oh no.
No, Lanice was
Oh,
up.
Lanice was
Yeah.
first. Yep.
So and I guess she was talking about how some lawyers are just out for money. She was like, "That's true."
Yep.
All right.
And then she said, "Okay, thank you."
And then Vicky
Oh,
says,
Earl said.
"Okay, this is Earl talking. How do you find out if you are in the will if a relative tells you they let?" Earl, I'm not. How do you find out if you are in the will if a relative tells you
They maybe
they left
okay.
it? They left you in the will,
They
Oh,
maybe?
left
okay, there we
you
go.
Yeah.
They
Left you something, but you don't have access to the will or trust. Right.
Oh, okay.
So the relative tells you they left you something, but you don't have access to the will or the trust. So how do you know?
Okay, and that's a great question because, again, as one of the common misconceptions is a will actually becomes public once someone passes. So if they passed away in Cook County, you can go to the clerk of the circuit court, which is in the Daly Center for probate, to the 12th floor, and you can request the will. So you can actually get a copy of that will. It's public record, anybody can access it. Now, if they created a trust, that's not public, which is part of why a trust is so advantageous. And without you having a copy of it, there's going to be no way to verify. You would have to be willing to roll the dice and file suit against that trustee in order to have a judge order them to release that trust to you. I wouldn't recommend going that route because unless you have very compelling evidence that there's a trust and that you're named in it, which would be somebody who saw it signing a sworn affidavit or testifying to that, very few judges are going to allow you to penetrate that trust. But as far as the will goes, you can go right down to the Daly Center on the 12th floor and then request a copy of it, and then they'll provide you with the certified one, and you can read through it and see exactly what it says.
All right. This is Jason. Jason chiming in.
Jason said, "Did not know wills are public access." Wow. All right.
Yeah.
See?
That's why we're here.
All right. What's the next comment? All right. And Vicky says, probably Earl, can you get a copy of an insurance policy?
So, not from the insurance company. An insurance policy is a private contract with a private company. And part of it being a private contract with the private company is that it's able to be kept private between the parties. If you're a beneficiary, yes, you can get a copy of it once the individual passes. But if you are not a beneficiary, then no, there's no obligation of the insurance company to release it, and it's actually prohibited pursuant to the terms of that life insurance policy.
All right.
Wow. I learned a lot. All right. That's it. That's the last comment right now.
Okay.
All right. So now we can go to the final point here.
Which I think we covered, but okay.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
I think
okay.
lightly went
Okay.
over it. But
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. Now we're going to get to the money part. We're going to talk about these trust fund babies.
All
Now,
right.
you hear so much
Yes.
about people creating, having these trust fund babies. And we're going to talk about it. You don't have to be, like you said, you don't have to be a millionaire to create trust fund babies. So,
All right.
So talk to us about how do we create these trust fund babies? How do we actually leave something worthwhile to our loved ones once we pass?
Yes. And this is something that I'm very excited about because for the first 3 years of my private practice, I wasn't even fully aware as to how to do this. And it wasn't until we recently had a client who was the beneficiary of such a policy and an approach that I got a chance to learn about it. So most of us have life insurance policies, and it runs the gambit on what that is, whether it's 50,000 all the way up to $1 million. We've seen clients. But the number one mistake that most people make is that they leave the policy to a specific individual. So as an example, I have a 13-year young daughter and I have a $300,000 life insurance policy. The number one mistake that most people make is that in my scenario, I would name Ariel as the beneficiary for that $300,000 life insurance policy. Now, a lot of people would say, well, why is that a mistake? Don't you want her to get the money? Well, the answer is yes. But if I die tomorrow, she wouldn't get the money because the life insurance company isn't going to turn over 300 grand to a 13-year-old. So her mother would have to go to probate court to be declared as the guardian. And then the probate court would allow for the $300,000 to go into an estate account that she would be the custodian for. And once she reached 18, then she would get all 300,000.
Oh, wow.
Now, just as a question for everyone listening, if you would have received $300,000 when you turned 18, what would you likely have done with it?
Yeah, type it in the chat, right? Yeah, let me know. Let me know the items that you would purchase.
Yeah. So go ahead and put those in there, and then we'll all see it. But the answer that I'm sure nobody's going to say is take it and use it to purchase $300,000 worth of stock that I would only then get the interest for every year. No one would have said that because no one would have known about it.
Absolutely.
And that's where those of us who don't come from wealth, where we come up short because you don't know how wealthy people use money to build more wealth. Well, as it turns out, there's a stock which owns all 500 of the S&P 500 stocks. So you can purchase one stock. It's called SPY. And when you buy that stock, you actually own all 500 of the top 500 stocks. So as the market does well, your stock does well. As the market does poorly, your stock does. But you don't have to worry about managing or figuring out what's the hottest stock because you get all 500 of the best stocks. The historical return of that stock over the last 50 years is 11.88%. So annually, that stock returns 12%.
Hey, hold on 1 second for me,
Last
Mario.
year,
You cut out.
It wasn't much. It wasn't much. No, that's fine. Go ahead.
You got to 11%, but I didn't hear what before that.
So it was 12%. So 12% is the historical return. Last year, the S&P 500 returned 32%.
Wow.
Yes. So what you can do is instead of saying that I want that $300,000 to go to Ariel, you say I want the $300,000 to purchase that stock, SPY. And then every year on the anniversary date of when you pass, you want 50% of the interest to go to your beneficiary. So on a year like last year, it would have been approximately $90,000 that would have been received in just interest alone. $45,000 would have went to Ariel, and then $45,000 goes back into the stock and purchases more. By doing that with the compounding interest, after 10 years, she would then receive $100,000 every single year for the rest of her lifetime.
For being your daughter.
Just for being the recipient of that policy by virtue of being my daughter. You got it. And because of the fact that the money, the principal, is never being touched,
Right.
it's only the interest that she's receiving, and it goes on in perpetuity. So even if it has a down year where it's only 5%, because the amount would be close to $1 million, that's still $50,000 that she would receive every single year for the rest of her life. And then she gets to choose who she wants it to go to upon her passing. So it truly creates that generational wealth we hear about. And it comes from me paying $86 a month for that $300,000 life insurance policy through State Farm. It's simply how you create the vehicle
Right.
after you pass, and you are taking the decision making out of the hands of an 18-year-old or a
Right.
21-year-old.
All right, Lanisha asked the question: how much is that stock? You don't know how much that stock is because that's all of the stock exchange of the S&P 500.
Do you know currently
No,
what the stock
no,
is going
you do.
for? Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So currently it's trading for $386. And again, for most of us, it would be tough to be able to come up with $300,000 at one time in order to buy enough of that stock where
Right.
even if it moves 10%, it's going to really grow the money. But that's the beauty of taking the policy, which
The
is
policy.
a large sum of money, and then focusing it on the stock, and you're making it easy for the trustee who follows behind you. That's one of the
Yes.
other big parts of a trust is you want to think practically. You don't want somebody having to do a lot of work to look out for your child after you're gone. You want for it to be as easy as can be, and then they just write the check, and then the child reaps the benefit.
We can go back to Jason. I'm not sure what he was
Okay.
trying to say.
Well, I'll say
Okay.
this. Earl had said, what if they had passed away years ago? And I think this is a follow-up to Earl had said about the insurance policy
And
or
the
right,
will,
or the will that someone
or
has
the,
left
the
for you.
trust.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So I guess what if they passed away years ago?
So
Doesn't matter. As long as if they were in Cook County and that will was filed, those wills are available in perpetuity. So you can go and find wills from the 50s, from the 40s. It's a part of that public record and it remains in perpetuity. So it's still a case of making the trip down to the Daily Center, going up to the 12th floor. When you go in, there's actually a big overhead sign that says wills counter, and that's where you're going to go.
I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what Jason. So Jason was saying,
Clients and customers are the best teachers,
Aren't
aren't
they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Unfortunately, you learn through sometimes, life experiences and sometimes other people's life experiences. And then Jessica just said, "Oh, this is
gems. All right, dropping some gems there.
All right.
And then what does it say? Jason says, nice gift to 28-year-old. A nice gift to a 28-year-old. That's right. Absolutely.
I'm sure. Not only that, but just the knowledge of continually going.
So when you have yours, nice gift to your children whenever you have them.
So talk to me, like, you had mentioned it earlier. So you have this trust and say, something happens and then you have this trust fund baby. And then what happens to that benefit? So what if something happens to that beneficiary? Where does it go then? Because it doesn't stop. I mean, like it has to go somewhere, right?
If they don't have any kids.
Right. Or if they have any kids, say they don't have any kids,
Right.
or they have multiple kids, but they didn't specify that on the trust. What happens with that trust then?
So in those instances, somebody's got to go to probate court. And we're right back to where it is that we don't want to be. But that's also the reason why you don't want to try and create your trust yourself, because an attorney such as myself, we always think in terms of threes. So whenever someone comes into the office and starts their estate planning, I say, you have to give me 3 different levels. So you want it to go to your child, but what happens if your child isn't here? And I get so many clients who say, I've never thought that far. And I say, I know. That's the reason you came to me, because I'm supposed to get you to think that far. So I force their hand and say, who's next? And I just this morning, I was at 60th and Eberhard. And this woman, she told me there is nobody after these first two options. And I said, it doesn't work that way. I'm going to put down your heirs if you don't give me a name. And then she said, well, what do you mean by my heirs? I said, if your siblings are alive, they would get it. She said, oh, no, I got a name. I got a name. And gave me that name. But we need to be thinking legacy wise. If we're talking about creating something that's going to go on forever, then we can't stop at just two. We got to go three at a minimum. And then in those instances, once we get past three, then we just default and say the heirs of whomever the third option was. So that way they still don't have to go through probate court.
All right.
Yeah, because we're trying to stay out of probate court no matter what.
At all costs.
At all costs.
Some of us are better at it than others.
Yep.
All right, so Lee says, thank y'all so much for this conversation. It is much needed. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Don't forget to share and like. Absolutely. The problem is that we don't have this knowledge. And because we're not millionaires, or our community is not dealing with millionaires, we don't understand the capacity of how we can make our money grow. And that's why we need to be educated. We can create generational wealth right where we are. All right, what else does the next thing say?
Loni says, do you...
Do you do free consultations?
Yep.
That's your question.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. He said absolutely. And at the end of the show, we will give you all of his information where he can be reached. So right before we get out of here, because we are running a little bit over, I just have one more question. I noticed that you had did I think a Zoom call or something on the new thing that's coming out with student loans. Do you want to talk briefly about that, or what it was? Just real quick.
So I don't know if that's a briefly kind of thing.
All right. So what can you give us? What can you give us? Take your time then.
So,
I'm sure a majority of the people on here may have student loans or know someone who has a student loan, and a lot of information has come out. So just trying to get some knowledge behind it.
yes. So thankfully, the Biden administration in August announced that the Biden administration is going to be forgiving up to $20,000 worth of student loan debt. So for anyone who has federal student loans, potentially you can have up to $20,000 worth of those student loans forgiven. And that's with no consequences, no tax ramifications, $20,000 eliminated. For anyone who never qualified for a Pell Grant while they attended college, you're going to get $10,000 forgiven. For those who qualified for a Pell Grant while they were attending school, they're going to get $20,000 forgiven. If you are on an income-driven repayment plan, which means that you've sent the Department of Education your 1040 transcripts in order for them to determine how much you make annually, you won't have to fill out an application. It's going to be automatic. If you've never sent the Department of Education your transcripts, then you're going to have to apply, and that application is going to be available in the first week of October. So you can go to the Department of Education's website and fill out the application, so that way you can apply for that $10,000 or $20,000 relief. Now, there's a lot of other things that go along with it. New changes to the income-based repayment plan. They're changing the way that discretionary income is calculated. It's also a case where you can qualify for public service loan forgiveness, even if you weren't on a direct loan product. So there's just tons of great changes which the Biden administration has made. Some of them are time sensitive, such as for the public service loan forgiveness. The application closes October 31st of this year. So we're almost at a month's time. That's all that's left. But the student loan repayment plan is completely being transformed. And for any individual who has a business, I know Jason had mentioned it earlier, there are ways where you don't have to worry about ever paying any student loans again. I have over $130,000 worth of student loan debt. And once the moratorium is lifted in this upcoming January, I won't pay a dime. I won't pay anything for my student loans.
Okay.
And that's because it's based on my adjustable gross income, not my total income. And that's something that a lot of people are unaware of and don't take advantage of.
So Mario, would you like to come back and talk about that? Would you like to come back on the show and talk about the student loan?
Absolutely. So I'm more than happy to come back on the show and discuss anything that you like. Thankfully, I know a little bit about several different things. So we can talk about property taxes. We can talk about businesses and how to structure that business, succession planning. I'm more than happy. Our firm's mantra and our motto is we're the education esquires, and it's because we want to get this education to the people who can benefit most from it. So whenever it is that there's an opportunity, I'd love to come back on and have that conversation, because for a lot of people, they think that there is no end in sight for student loans, but there is. You just have to take advantage of the different opportunities available, and then you won't have to worry about student loans like myself.
All right.
All right,
Was there any other questions on there?
Let me see here. Yep, we got to thank you very much. Thank you. Lenise says
He seems to know a lot about a lot. He seems to know a lot about a lot.
Yeah, he does. You know, you got to give the man his props.
All right,
Yeah,
now Facebook users, what does Lenise say?
What else, Lenise say?
Okay, and then the Facebook user down one.
Yeah,
all right,
I got
said
that.
thank
Kelly.
you. All right,
Great
Kelly
dis-
says
Hey,
great
Kelly, thanks
discussion.
for,
Hi Kelly, thanks for tuning in.
Oh.
And Lenise says I totally need you in my contacts. All
For
right,
sure, and I'm about to get you all that information. All right, great wisdom, yeah. And Jessica says thank you for.
I think this live was very informative.
And that's what we do. We like to think, Jessica, that all our lives are
Informative.
Yeah, that's what we do. We don't just
I
talk
think so.
about. Yeah,
think so.
yeah. Well, thank you so
Right.
much.
And see, Jessica, what people fall short is that they think, well, I'm not married right now, so I don't need to tune in.
Right.
But it's not about marriage. It's about relationships. It's about life. It's about trying to navigate the whole of a person, not just one aspect of it.
Right.
All right.
We're talking about getting yourself together.
That's
together.
right. Getting together, so when you get together with somebody, you guys can get it together. All
That's
right.
So I'm gonna put up Mario.
Even though we're not going to talk about Mario and he doesn't believe in the institution, so we're not even going to
Yeah,
get
he's
into
definitely
that.
gotta come
All
back
right,
on
let's get his information up.
All right, so here, get ready, guys. I'm going to drop Mario's information up here. This is where you can get in contact with Mario, his telephone number, his fax machine, and his email address.
So
All right?
copy it down, guys. Copy it down.
I'm going to tell you, it's well worth it. He's very attentive to his clients. And if you ask him a question, he will definitely give you the straight answer,
And
whether
if you
want
guys
to or not.
and if you guys have young kids and you have not made a trust or a will or estate plan, you need to get into it, because tomorrow is not promised, and it's better to be prepared than to need to be prepared and you're not prepared. So
Exactly.
make sure you guys do what you need to do.
So feel free, and I'll just say this for Mario. I know he wouldn't mind you reaching out to him. Like I said, he's a wealth of information.
At the bottom, we have Mia Miller. What did she say?
Do you have? Oh, okay, Jason. Jason wants to know if you have a book.
No, unfortunately, my clients don't allow for me to dedicate the time it would take to put a book together. But I am very hopeful that someday, once I get a little break, I plan to. But it's probably not going to be a book about this stuff. It's going to be a book about my thoughts about the institution of marriage. So.
No,
For sure.
no.
For sure. Now,
All right, let's go to
that'd be
Mia.
a
What
good
did Mia
read.
say? Down one. Look down right there.
Okay, it's just saying heart. I mean, the smiley face or whatever. I'm not good with these emoji things. I
don't know what they
use
are.
my words.
All right, Edward Jackson says, learned a lot. All right, Edward, make sure that you are planning for your daughter. All right?
Yeah, for sure.
Don't get stuck in the not knowing.
You need one. I'm not sure what that comment.
Lenise says you need one. When I said a will and estate plan and all the things that she's talking about. Lenise right there, what she
okay,
say?
sure.
Can you please have him back for that? All right, definitely can.
Yeah.
Definitely can.
Yeah.
For the all the other stuff, how to do the business, how to set it up or whatever, all of that good stuff. We want you guys to prosper in every area.
Everyone wants you to write a book.
All right, all right. So I have one last question, then we're gonna let you go. So hypothetically, I'm asking for a friend. He has 12 siblings, and their father passed. And one of the siblings is trying to become owner of the estate, but it's not here. Do you work with people outside of Illinois? How does that work? Um, is it in all 50 states, or what is the first thing to do if a parent dies and they didn't leave anything, and there's a bunch of heirs from a bunch of different baby mamas, and they're just like all over the place?
Yeah. So the first thing to do is ask the question of how you ended up in such a family dynamic.
Papa was a Rolling Stone.
But
He did not,
after
but
you,
I guess he didn't believe in the institution of marriage either, or
yeah,
just a bunch of them.
he just believed in being fruitful and multiplying. So,
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
so unfortunately, how it works is that probate is based on where the individual or where the stuff is. So if there's a property, the probate's going to take place in whatever county the property is located in. So the
Okay,
first step is to reach out to counsel in that county. And the answer is no. I don't even do probate in Will County, Kane County, McHenry County, because I don't have the time to be able to drive to those counties and make it a point to be there. There's enough work right here in Cook County to keep me busy so much I can't even write that book. So uh, you have to go wherever the stuff is. And if you
okay,
were one of 12, one of the things that a lot of people just take for granted is they think that the law is going to protect them from having to have those tough conversations. And again, this is something you all are very familiar with.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
When dad dies, you got to talk to those siblings. Whether you are estranged, whether you like them or you don't like them, you're all in it now together. You have a 1/12 interest, and it's better that you all decide together what happens with it as opposed to allowing a court to do it or paying attorneys to fight over it.
Right.
Pick up the phone, text message, email, and say, hey guys, let's talk this thing through. And what you'll oftentimes find is that once you start saying it's going to save us $10,000 to get on the same page together, now all of a sudden everybody's going to be kumbaya and enjoying being together and saying, let's do this. So
Okay.
if that situation happens, it's time to have that family reunion that you've been putting off and say, we just got to talk about it. And don't let the first initial kind of rebuffs sway you. You have to be
All right.
persistent and say, even if we don't want to talk about it, we got to talk about it and just stay persistent. And once you do that, oftentimes it'll start to get on that right path.
Okay. All right. So Lanice was saying he wanted him to come back on to talk about his
His
view
view
on
of
marriage.
marriage.
You don't want to hear his view on marriage, Lanice. Not
No,
us married
no, I'll give
folks.
you the Cliff Notes version as we go along on these
This is
Friday
why I
Night Live.
can't ever get the book read because people they want to suppress my views.
All right. Well, we thank you so much, Jason. Bring his information up one more time, please, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. We hope this is very beneficial for everyone, no matter what age you are. Think ahead, right? Think ahead. Put your affairs in order. Stop leaving your shiggity for somebody else to clean up. All right. So there it is. All right, Mario, is there any last words that you would like to leave our viewers with besides your view
So
on marriage?
I would like to say thank you to the both of you for inviting me on, as I greatly appreciate it. I've enjoyed myself in the three conversations that we've had. It's always been great time and great fun. So thank you for that. But more than anything else, I just want to really impress upon the hearts of people that we don't plan for ourselves. All of this stuff we're talking about is not for ourselves because we're not going to be here in order to take advantage of it. But if you say, I love someone and I would be willing to do anything for them, you have to do your estate plan because that's when you're going to truly find out whether someone was willing to do anything for you. So I don't want to hear from anybody ever that this is my child, I'd do anything for him, but I won't go get my affairs in order to prevent them from having to pay $4,000 to go to court because you're not being true to form. So if you love somebody, show them by making their life easiest because in the worst time of their life, they're dealing with you not being here. the last thing they want to do is go talk to some fancy suited attorney who's trying to take all their money. So please make sure that if you love them, show them by preparing them so they don't have to give away thousands of dollars and deal with overpriced attorneys. Please do so.
All right.
Man,
so
you
Lenise
heard
says
her.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
And
Yep.
then Vicky says, thank you so much for your time, attorney. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, you all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. You move too fast.
I'm
Mario,
moving
don't go anywhere.
All right. I'm moving too fast. We passed the time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks again for tuning in to another Friday. We'll see you next Friday. Oh, next Friday we're having on the anniversary of Marcia and Jerry Eubanks. You want to bring that up real quick, Jace? I know.
I sure do. Yeah, last week we went out and celebrated them for their 25th anniversary. We
For
wanted
a quarter of a century being together in
Yep.
the institution of marriage.
Yep. So we're going to have them on next week, and we're going to talk about some of the things that they went through and how they got to that point of being in marriage for 25 years. Because we all know 25 years of marriage, we done been through some things.
That's
so
right.
We're going to come and
we
talk
have
about it.
we have redefined and rewritten the narrative of what marriage used to be looked at. We are redefining and making it what we want it to be.
So we wanted
All
to say
right?
congratulations, and we're just really going to celebrate them next week. So make sure you tune in, right? We always want to tune in on success, right? We don't want to always talk about that, relationships
Failures.
aren't all that great.
That's right.
This is a success story, and that's what we're going to celebrate next week.
All right, so we're ready to go out now? Am I moving too fast?
Yeah,
All
don't go
right.
anywhere, Mario.
All right, and as always, we're in it to win it.